Good evening. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Zolomon. And with me, as always, is the Honorable J.P. Marzullo. How you doing, J.P.?
Well, I'm not melting yet.
I don't know. I'm
but
melting.
Certainly
Got
the
all the air
temperature.
conditioners in the house going off. We took a break.
Yep, 2 weeks.
We took a couple of weeks break here. I don't know what you did on your break, but I went on a diplomatic mission.
I realize that.
I went on a diplomatic mission to Canada to talk about them becoming the 51st state.
How'd that go?
And well, I think I did pretty good. So first off, here's what I said. I said, look, listen up, all you hosers. So you got to speak Canadian, and I think that's part of Trump's problem is he's not
Can't
speaking
speak Canadian. Okay.
So I said, listen up. I said, the best way to keep your land glorious and free, just like it says in your hockey song, is to become the 51st state, eh? Right? Because we got all the good stuff down here. We got the Second Amendment. We got AR-15s. We got stealth bombers, and we got a Pete Hegseth. That's the best way to keep your land glorious and free. And if you join us, you can start using real dollars instead of monopoly dollars. So, and if
You had more fun than I did, obviously.
I told them, I said, you can start having your fireworks on the 4th of July instead of the 1st of July, like God intended in the Bible. And
Right.
And if you want to keep your state flag with the maple syrup logo on it, even though the real stuff comes from Vermont, that's cool with us too, because we like maple syrup too. So, so I got a lot of great reaction, a lot of excitement to my arguments, and
Good.
And basically everybody said the same thing. They got real excited. They said, you know what, you should come back and celebrate when we become the 51st state, and just when you leave, don't come back until we're the first 51st state. So I thought that was good news. I thought. So I'm still waiting to hear back from the Prime Minister's office, but I think we're in good shape.
Great. That's good news. So you had a very productive 2 weeks.
Yes, I met a lot of people. They were very excited to see me.
Super.
Excited, I think, is the word I would use.
Yeah. What about Niagara Falls? Are we going to take over the Canadian side?
We'll take over the Canadian side.
Okay.
When you go to Niagara Falls, on the American side, you can't see nothing.
All you see is buildings on the other side.
You're looking out to the Canadian side. When you're on the Canadian side, you can see everything. It's beautiful. I mean, it is. It really is beautiful.
Maid of the Mist.
We did the Maid of the Mist thing. They lit up the falls
For you?
from the Canadian side. They lit up the falls.
On the American side.
They lit up the American falls with red, white, and blue lights at night.
Oh, nice.
And then they had fireworks over the falls. I mean, it was pretty good. I mean,
Cool.
So no, so that was I went on a little diplomatic mission.
Nice.
So I think we're in good shape.
Good.
So.
That's good to hear. It's kind of hard to not laugh at that, but that's okay. I did pretty well for a while.
All right. Who do we have today, JP?
We have Walt McFarland. Walter, how are you?
Doing great. Good to be with you
you
guys.
doing?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Because what you want to do when it's 98 degrees outside is find a bunch of studio lamps to get under and get even warmer, right?
Oh
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We do have, we do have something you can rub on your skin, to protect it, but I left that home, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we talked, we recently met and talked about a few things, but I'd like the viewers to get an idea of where you came from, what you did in the past, what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. And the last question will be is, are you giving the U.S. Senate race a good look? So let's start wherever you want. You can start backwards if you want. It doesn't matter.
Sure. No, I'll give the quick 30-second from the beginning. I was born and raised right here in Manchester. And was here for the first 30 years of my life. I started volunteering while I was starting college. I started getting the political bug. I went to Georgetown down in D.C.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
On my off time, I would, go down and sit in the Senate chambers back when you could just walk right in and see the lions of the Senate, during their debating, and really caught the bug. And so when I was coming back here on breaks and things like that, I would volunteer. So I did
On a campaign,
on a
you said?
campaign, like
Yeah.
Ray Wazorik's campaign or Bill Zelliff's or Judd Gregg's. And through that, I got a staffing position on Bob Dole's presidential campaign. That's how long ago we're talking. We're talking
Wow.
96. And so right when that ended, I was saying to you off the air, right when that ended, I went back to school, back to Georgetown, just to finish up with the intention of coming right back here and getting back into politics and maybe running for office someday. And from going to school there, I got an opportunity with a company that was going through bankruptcy to get a real world education on business. There's no better education than that, a company whose survival depends
Yeah.
on what you do, right, and the decisions you make. So while doing that, I got a master's in business administration and yada, 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 a 20-year successful career helping businesses that had gone through bankruptcy or were struggling or needed turnaround, mostly manufacturing companies, a lot of those in food manufacturing. And I woke up a few years ago, I turned 50, and you do a little bit of self-analysis at that point, and I said to myself, I'm not doing what I thought I would do with my life. I'm not doing what I wanted to do with my life. And there was a little bit of personal angst about that. I was like, what are you doing? This isn't a dress rehearsal. Do what
Right.
you have a passion for.
Right.
And so with that, I started thinking very seriously about getting back into politics. I didn't know if it was, being a staffer or writing about it or running for office. Although if I'm being honest, I always thought I would run someday for something. And so I was watching the first congressional district race last cycle in 2024. And I wasn't really hearing a voice that kind of spoke to me about the direction I thought we should be going. And so I got into it, but I got into it very late.
Yes, you did.
Very late, right?
Yeah.
And truthfully, with the goal of affecting the conversation and the debate more than anything. You get in that late, it would take lightning in a bottle to win, but you want to get on the debate stage. You want to make sure we're talking about the issues that you want to talk about and contribute to it in some way, shape, or form. And I feel like I did that, and I was successful in that. And after it was over, I thought about the experience long and hard, and it was far more positive of an experience than I thought it would be. Things are so divisive in politics now,
Yeah.
and with social media, the things that are said are awful. But going around the first district, I met a lot of great people. I talked to a lot of great people, and we didn't always agree, but they were positive experiences, and it helped me see areas of the state that I don't spend time in. So it was a really positive experience, and I wasn't sure that I would ever do it again, but I wanted to stay, active and involved. So just to finish up, I'm being long-winded on your question, but
Well, we have plenty of time, so
perfect.
you can be as long-winded as you like, or
Awesome.
we can, one of the two.
One of the
but-
two. So, one of the things I really enjoyed doing on the campaign was writing opinion pieces for the local newspapers and things like that, and writing my viewpoints on things. I enjoyed not only contemplating the topics, but the writing and rewriting of it. So, since the election, the campaign was over, I've been doing a weekly blog, and I have a blog. I'll shamelessly plug it now, if you don't mind.
No,
Walter.
you can plug it now in at the
Yeah,
end.
WalterMcFarland.com. And I've been writing weekly on it, and it's, my take is what I would describe, some people would describe as a moderate Republican. I see myself as a conservative Republican who appear as moderate because there are some things I don't believe belong under the purview of government. And on that stuff, I don't touch. Some of the social, some of the cultural stuff, which it's not that I don't have strongly held beliefs on it, I just don't feel belongs under the purview of government. Listen, free people consent to be governed because we want to be kept safe in our persons and property, right? If we felt we were safe in our persons and property, we wouldn't need government, we wouldn't consent to be governed. That's why we do it. So government is here to protect us, strong borders, strong defense, provide for a robust economy so that we all have the potential to reach our potential, and then stay the heck out of the way. And so sometimes, that feeling and my approach on social issues pins me as moderate, but I take a deep dive in some of those blogs. These are probably on average about 1,700 words, and you can talk about the nuance of issues. And it's funny that I got into writing blogs when now we're in 140 characters a minute language, world, and we're in 7-second TikTok videos.
Right.
And here's this old blast from the past writing, 1,500, 2,000 word blogs, but I've really enjoyed it and I've stayed active with it.
So you're still doing that? 'Cause
I'm still
I
doing
went
it.
onto your site.
I posted this morning.
Okay.
You know, talking about perspective and, you know, the big, beautiful bill, which some people see as the greatest thing ever and some people see as an immoral bill, right, depending on their perspective. So I was just using that backdrop to talk about our perspective and how we kind of get to where we are with our life experiences. But so to finish up and answer your question, I am strongly considering a run for Senate. Again, the congressional race was a positive one. I got great feedback from people after the fact. I think my message and how I deliver it relates to people. I just got in really late. And if I do get into the Senate race, I won't make that mistake. If I get in, I would probably look to announce the first week of August.
On this show, of course. We keep trying it. Why does everybody laugh when we say
I'm only laughing because every show I've been on has
Yeah,
said the
I see
same
that,
thing.
right.
And I'm trying to figure out how to say yes to everybody. And apparently I'm not a really good
Well, you can-
politician because I haven't figured that out yet.
Most don't. We had Dan Innes on.
Yep.
And before we went on vacation, before you had a diplomatic.
We had him this close.
We did.
This close.
Yeah,
This
almost,
close.
almost.
And then
But when he walked out, he said, "Okay, yeah, I'm in." Why didn't he do that on the air?
I missed it by a minute.
Yeah, we missed it by that much. You're right.
But
You're right.
he's in. He formally announced what this week.
This
yeah,
morning.
Yeah, this morning actually. I'm not sure where he did it. I didn't see any.
Well, I know he didn't do it here.
Yeah, did you hear us? Yeah, so he's definitely in. He's an interesting candidate, I think, and he's won the district. You know, he's won the Senate race there, which is not easy in the area he's in. He's in not Dunbarton, in Bradford. What's the other B this way? Can't think of an. Bedford? No.
No, he's not
No,
bad for it.
doesn't matter. He's in one of the states.
But, you know, getting people in. See, you look at the Democrat side, right? Chris Pappas has been anointed. He's going to get a free run, essentially, right?
Yep.
And that's on the heels of Harris getting a free run. And so the Democrats in the state of New Hampshire are now going to get really no say in their Senate nominee and their presidential one. So
And if they have their way, that's the way it'll be from now on. There will never be a reason for a Democrat primary in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
They've learned that.
And so I think by contrast, the Republicans having a primary and having some good qualified people in it and having these healthy debates and talking about it sets us up well, because one of my frustrations and why I get into CD1 was, you know, if you look at the last 4 cycles, Pappas has won 54 to 46. Not about 54 to 46, 54 to 46 each time.
Each time.
Okay, and 2 of those were presidential cycles, right?
Yeah.
And so he can't be a very popular incumbent if all he's getting is 54, right?
Yeah.
So something about it is what we're doing on the Republican side that is putting a ceiling at that 46%. And we have to figure out a way of putting forth a candidate who hits all our really core beliefs as a Republican, but doesn't, by the time we get to the general, scare the hell out of you know, the undeclared, and even some of the conservative Democrats who like what we're saying on, you know, fiscal matters, right? So we have to figure out a way to reach those people, because Pappas was beatable in those four
Yep.
cycles for Congress, and he'll be beatable in the Senate thing, particularly with the increase in Republican registrations we had in November, right?
Yep.
The state looks good. So I think a healthy debate to make sure that the right candidate is standing at the end of this to put forward against Chris Pappas, because this is a really good shot.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's a good opportunity for us. But we have talked about, we have a tendency not to get behind one person even after the primary is over. Then we don't support him or her.
Well, there's
Usually.
there's multiple reasons for it, right? I mean, the first couple of reasons, or the first reason, is that we tend to have a large field in the beginning.
Yep. Like
and
17 or so?
everybody is very passionate about the person that they're supporting.
Yep.
And then we whittle them down through the debate process. And even when we get into the primary, we don't have a strong contender one way or the other. We're talking about,
Yep.
single digit differences. And so
Of the candidates that run in the primaries.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm talking
you're right.
local
No, you're right.
stuff.
Yep.
And so we got single digit differences between these folks, and folks are just eking out a primary win. And then we have what do we call it? Unification Day or whatever, where we have
Unity
the
breakfast.
the unity breakfast, right? And then we have this very, very tiny
Time frame.
amount of time to get these supporters that were very passionate about this large group that didn't make it through.
You're right.
To get these supporters to get behind these folks. And what inevitably happens is people simply don't show up
Yeah.
because, oh, my guy didn't win the primary, so I really don't care anymore. And
Yeah,
so,
like Bill and his-
and so we've got this very short period after the primary to the general, and we're trying to address that too
Yeah.
in the legislature. But there's a number of issues that make it very difficult to go up against an incumbent. And so this cycle,
Money for one.
with
Pappas.
Pappas, where there is no incumbent, is a huge opportunity, but at the same time, Pappas is already being treated as though he was the incumbent,
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, those are
and he
two
will have that
real-
advantage.
Yeah, those are two really good points. One, the slim margin by which our primary winner wins, right?
Yeah.
So there's no even semi-consensus after primary day that, oh, this was our person, right? And that short window, because if you look at that race last
That
time.
window needs money,
Pappas had, what, $2.5 million
Yep.
on September 11th.
Right.
And Russell Prescott had a few $100,000.
Yeah.
And so not only do you have to consolidate everyone and get everybody energized, but you have to play catch up on the money, right?
Yes.
And so then when you're trying to catch up on the money, unless the national committee has enough money to send your way, you're in trouble. And if them having enough money to send your way depends on what the national table looks like, what all these other races
Yep.
are doing, right? And they prioritize
Exactly.
maintaining the seats they already have first. Then they go down the list of
Where
what-
we can win.
where we can win.
Yep.
And in the presidential cycle this last time, they said, okay, where is Trump going to win? Because those are the seats we can pick up. And then they get down to New Hampshire, where when Russell won the primary, Harris was up by 9 points here, right? It
Yes.
didn't end that way, but at that point, when the national committee is thinking about where do we put the money,
They're not
seating
gonna
one in
put
New
it here.
Hampshire wasn't where it was.
Exactly.
But if you, to your point, if you moved that primary up, it allows time not only to get people energized and behind you, it allows catch up on the money.
Yeah, I mean, the bill has been passed. I don't know when they're going to do it, but it's either going to be June or July. And I don't think it really happens until I don't know whether it's going to happen in 2026 or on the next presidential one.
I think it was going to be on the next cycle.
The next cycle, yeah. But to your point there, it's hard to get people behind someone they've been passionate with, and you lose. It's hard to pull them over because things are said, not so much by the candidates, but by the people around them, and then it never gets done. I don't know how we do that all the time.
And it's funny because it's easier for the candidates to come together than their supporters.
Oh,
I've
you're
been
absolutely-
telling this story about Chris Bright. Chris Bright walked into the Unity breakfast, right? And he had a handwritten card for each of us that he was competing against. You know, complimenting us, telling us what a great experience it was, what he learned from us. It couldn't have been more gracious, right?
Yes.
And it was genuine.
Yeah.
But, you know, if then you walked out and talked to any of his supporters or any of my supporters or any of Russell's press, they would still have some resentment for things that are
course,
said,
yeah.
right? But the candidates at that point are like, listen, it's more important
Let's
that we beat
win,
Pappas.
right, yep.
So it's an interesting dynamic that having been a candidate,
Well,
I picked up on. I'm like, that's very interesting.
It's one of the side effects of the divisive nature of the media over the last 40, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about it several times, right? There was a time when Reagan could go and have beer with
Tip O'Neill.
Tip O'Neill,
yeah.
right? There was a time when you could be civil with the other side, even though you were vastly apart on the. But we've grown into this society where we are programmed to hate each other and be divided on these political lines, and so when we get to that point, the emotion is, they want the emotion because the emotion is the shock factor, and the shock factor is what sells commercials,
Yes.
right? That's what it is. And so we have been programmed over the last several decades to be passionate. Get out there, do the grassroots, pound
Knock
the
doors
sand, knock the doors,
the
right?
parades
And be passionate about your candidate, and that has a drawback when it comes time after the primary to, okay, now let's talk about what's good for the country, what's good for our party.
Yep.
And
more importantly, what's good for the state.
we're allowing emotion to get way too deep into these decision-making processes after someone loses.
Yeah, you're right. And it's not just what we get from the media. It's not just what we get from social media. So my team, last time around, I had a digital team that would present copy for me to approve for fundraising, emails and texts and things like that. And I would read it and I'd be like, guys, you know me, you know my voice. I'm not saying this, right? But they're like, Walter, this is what is raising money right now. If you don't, particularly in this presidential cycle that's sucking up the oxygen in the room,
Right.
you're not going to raise any money. And so it's fed that way too, because all of us, whether we've donated to campaigns in the past or not, our phones are inundated now with texts and emails
Sure.
about this stuff, and everyone is more emotional and more dire with each one that comes. The world is on fire more and more with each text and email you get, and
The
that
end of the
has
month is coming.
repercussions.
The end of the quarter is coming. This is your last chance to save the world
To save the world.
with $10.
It's all it takes to save the world. The
right.
price of a cup of coffee, right? Over the course of the month, or two at Starbucks, or one a day for the month, And but it takes candidates standing up and saying, I'm not going to do that, But there's a reason I didn't win, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of reasons. I got in late. We talked about that. But one of them is I wasn't willing to do that, and so you have a lot of people that are going home, losing a primary, that we're doing it the right way. And then we get to the general and people say, why can't we have better candidates than these two? Well, because they're on their couch now. They just got sent home, right?
Yeah.
So we all need to look ourselves in the mirror, but it's happening by how things are presented to us, but it's also happening to us because some of the people that are seeking these leadership positions aren't being leaders when they campaign. They're letting their campaign staff lead
Yeah.
instead of leading their campaign staff.
That's very true. Yeah.
And then you throw in the dark money and the PACs and everything they're doing, and they really ratchet up the temperature, right?
Yeah. It's hard to raise, I always I've run for a couple of things, won and lost another one, but, people have to understand that it's about the money in the end, and you have to be able to find a way to raise that money. And it's not going to happen in New Hampshire because there aren't enough people in New Hampshire with that much money to get you to where you have to go. Because every time you see an ad that says, well, Jean Shaheen's raising all her money in Maine and Rhode Island, and she should be raising money in New Hampshire. No, she's doing it the right way. You have to reach out. You reach the locals first. You try to raise money because there are people in the state we could get to take over that, right? To give you more money, but everybody's trying to get that one person to go on board with them and chip in the money. Right?
And part of that is, particularly in the Senate, these aren't local races anymore. These are nationwide Senate races because people from all over the country have a vested interest in what the count is. To be crass about it, what the count is, red shirts versus blue shirts.
Yep.
Everybody in the country has a vested interest in that. So money starts coming in from everywhere and it becomes an arms race. And so if the Democrat is taking money from all over the place, you can't be that person that stands up and says, I'm just going to take money from New Hampshire. Because if you do, you're going to lose. The Democrat is going to go down to Washington and represent us that way instead of the way we would want to be represented. So because of that, you almost have no choice. And now it's beyond Senate. Even the U.S. House seats are becoming that way, right? There are, a handful that both national committees, both the NRCC and the National Democratic Committee, identify as key ones to pick up or flip. And again, they start reaching out to their nationwide donor base and saying, kick into this one.
Yes.
And then between Act Blue and Win Red, where you can give a donation, then that then gets dispersed to all these different campaigns, that's feeding it too.
Yeah, the PACs.
And so I would love to sit here and say, if I do this, I would only take money from New Hampshire. But guess what? You're not winning.
Right. No, I agree with you. And the DNC, they have targeted our state house to win some seats there.
Yes.
Fortunately, they didn't, but they're going to even squeeze us harder because they know that you can make some headway here. It's a fairly small state, and I could not have run for office in Annapolis. There's no way. I mean, it's a lot of Democrats down there, but there's certainly some conservatives too. But you can't get enough money, so I think it's unfortunate that money is important in the race. But for most of us, we say it shouldn't be, right? I want to vote for a candidate. If he doesn't have the money, fine. I want to vote for somebody who has it pretty close to my beliefs.
Right.
Not 100%, but pretty close that I could live with.
Yeah.
Some I can't. I have some core values that I don't want to budge on, and I won't. But I can.
Correct.
But you're right. It has to be a discussion. The thing that drives me crazy, and we've talked about this, we do extremely well in the state. I mean, and this state is purple leaning toward blue, I think, unfortunately. But if you look at it that way, the independents are really the biggest party. They have more. You have more members in that area than you have in others. So
They are, but undeclared doesn't mean that they don't have a political bent,
No,
right?
you're
It
right,
means they're
yeah.
not with the parties, but you can still break it down, especially with the data people that are around now in this industry. You can cut it a million different ways and see where those undeclareds really are.
Yeah.
But to your point on going after the state houses, if we as Republicans continue to win in terms of states' rights and putting issues back to the states, then the Democratic Party at the national level is going to have to focus more on the state houses, right? Because they
Yep.
know the decisions are going to be made there,
Yep.
and they still want their views enacted. So that will necessarily drive them more into those state house races as well. But I keep coming back to the fact that, to your point, money shouldn't be the determining factor in these things. But we are a very special state in terms of the ability to grassroots.
Oh, yeah.
And if
no
you go
question.
to any other state and try and do what we do, and we're clinging to it for dear life, right?
Yeah.
And it's still getting very digital, very social media, and less going to the red arrow. It is, and we're clinging to it, but it's changing. And as I always say, if we ever get to a point where we can vote on this device, Republicans may never win another election,
over.
right?
Absolutely.
So we have to do a better job of figuring out a way to reach people with our messaging. We have to figure out a way to determine what are the core issues that we should be focusing on and what are the ones that, boy, in a perfect world, I could handle that, I could tackle that, but we're not in a perfect world. We're in a country where half of the people believe something differently than I do.
Yeah.
So how do I operate within that? That's really, I think, needs to be the key focus, because otherwise we're going to end up in a position where for 2 or 4 or 6 years, when we're in the majority, we get our way and we get legislation through that we believe in, but the majority always changes, right? And so for 2, 4, 6 years, they're going to get their way, right? And we can't, as a nation, and I think about this as a business owner who tries to budget in 5-year windows and even
what's
10-year
the
windows.
Yeah, right.
How do you do that when you don't know what your laws are going to be in 2 or 4 or 6 years? So it's far better if we could get to a place where, even though, as you say, we have our core beliefs and the things we will not bend on, we need to get to a place where we can predictably govern in sort of a straight line instead of penduluming back and
Swings.
forth depending on who's in power.
Yeah.
And that, I wish I could answer that question on how we do that tomorrow. But it does involve some compromise, right, and some
Yeah.
consensus building. Even though we would like to snap our fingers and have it be exactly what we want, it's just not sustainable because it'll only be exactly what we want for a handful of years before the other side gets in charge, and then it's exactly what they want.
Yeah. Well, when I ran for state senate, I went down to Massachusetts, and I said, "You're not going to win down here, so don't give any money to that guy down there that's running because you can't win." But I could use the money to win a seat here,
Yeah.
and I think, certainly, the Republicans, the few Republicans they have in Massachusetts, will do that. They came up and campaigned, they held signs because they're not going to do anything there. So I think we're in a good position there as well.
Why do you guys think, I was asking someone this today, and I have my flippant answer for it, but why do you think our entire congressional delegation is Democratic, but for our local leaders, we like Republicans? What is that dynamic all about? Is that just an anomaly,
tough
or is
one.
there a reason behind it?
So I asked this question. I was on a trip in South Dakota, and we're talking 20 years ago now. And I asked a local at a bar that exact same question. And he said, well, here in the Dakotas, we have a lot of highway. The states out there are huge.
Yeah,
They're
flat
massive.
and huge, right?
We need a lot of money to keep up our roads. We have winters, so the roads
Right.
are crap. He says, so when I vote locally, I vote conservative because that's how I want to live. But when I send someone to Washington, D.C., I want them to bring back as much of your tax money from your state as
To
possible
their state.
to build my roads.
That's
And that's
yeah.
my flippant response.
That's the reason. I
agree
actually
with
asked
you.
that question
Yeah.
of a voter, and that's the response I got.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic, and I know the whole New England congressional delegation, save one, is Democrat, but it's interesting
No,
that
we don't need to save her. She's definitely a Democrat, just with a different name. We all know who I'm talking about, right?
So, yeah, but it's just it's quite an interesting dynamic, and when you look at the majorities we now have at the state house, built that back up again, but to have this delegation, right, that's all Democrat going down there, but that is my flippant response. But you always wonder if there's something in the voters that actually
but are voters
think
actually
that.
thinking of that?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, because that's what's happening.
Correct.
But are people going to the polls thinking that? Are conservatives thinking that when they check off for a conservative to go to state senate, but a Democrat to go to Washington?
Senate, yeah.
Is that really what's going through their minds?
I don't know. That's why I asked the question. But it's interesting because once an incumbent gets in, right,
It's hard to move them out.
It's hard to move them out, and there's also those stories. Your neighbor's going to say, "Well, their office helped me with this, their office helped me
Yeah.
with that," and constituent services, what the offices do for their constituents, whether it's Republican or Democrat,
That's
they're all
true.
going to advocate well for you, right? But the voter's going to be like, "Wow, Jean Shaheen really cares about me because her office got this done for me," and then they start telling neighbors, and that's part of the incumbent advantage, right?
Yes.
Also, part of it is, you're not going to get primaried, and you start raising money on day one. And
Yeah.
for Senate, you have 6 years to stockpile that money. So that's part of it once they're incumbent. But it's just an interesting dynamic, one that obviously we want to change.
Yeah, I mean, even I guess it was Pappas and Hassan who put a bill through to have the first full VA hospital here, and so they want to bring in a lot of those veteran votes by saying that. Now it's been approved that they will look into it anyway.
Right.
We've talked about it on a show. I don't think there's really any need for a full service one here because it's a great clinic and they do a great job over there. But who are you going to get to come here? What kind of doctors are you going to get to come here when you have Boston here and Dartmouth? And I mean, it's hard to recruit those people to come to serve. And a lot of in the old day anyway, back in the day, they would be military guys who have retired in their private practice, but then goes to the VA. And so, I don't know the answer to that, but I think you're absolutely right. What is the mindset of a voter when they go to the polls to do that? I mean, what creates that?
There's also the other dynamic that is unique to New Hampshire, and we've talked about that before. That's the old saying is, I'm not going to vote for you unless I meet you 3 times.
Yes, right.
Right?
Yep.
And we are a small enough state. There's only 1 million
Four
plus,
now, almost
right?
Almost 1.4 million now.
Right.
Yep.
But the largest city in New Hampshire is Manchester. We're about 100,000 people, right? And so we are a state where people campaign very hard and very local. And someone who's not in politics actually has the opportunity to meet face to face, shake hands to hands,
Yep.
and talk to people that they then go in and vote for, right?
Yes.
Most of the Democrats in the state I've met personally. I've
Sure.
shaken their hand. I've spoken to them personally. I don't vote for them, but that's how open the state is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think a lot of people will vote for somebody that they have spoken to face to face. I think that's a large part of it.
Well, you vote for somebody that you end up liking. Doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that you like everything they did, but because it's like, who do people buy from? They buy from people they like. And I think it's the same way in politics. They're going to vote for
Right.
people they
There's
like.
a particular restaurant here in Manchester that I absolutely love, and it pains me to no end that when I pay my bill, it goes into the Democrat coffers, but I still love the food. I love the restaurant.
Chicken tenders are good. What can I tell you?
I mean, you can't deny it.
No,
right?
No, you're right.
You can't,
You're
and
right.
the chocolate M&M ice cream ain't bad either.
But the funny thing is that with Pappas, what I see is when he first said he was going to run, all of a sudden he's tough now. He's going to be tough. Really? I mean, he's not tough. He's speaking out against things he didn't speak out before. He's sort of coasted behind Shaheen.
Well, we
'cause he
spoke
was-
about that too.
Yeah.
He's been reelected several times, but the only time he's very visible is during
Yep.
the election cycle.
Yep.
He disappears completely, and he votes party line, and
Yep.
you don't hear from him at all. I mean, when was the last time you actually saw a video of Pappas making a speech on the House floor?
No.
We
No, I
we don't see him pop up there on C-SPAN
Now,
very often
yeah,
at all.
You see Senator Hassan standing behind Schumer every time Schumer goes to the podium. So
Right.
it's that,
But
it's that
it's-
look. But she does.
It's an image thing.
Yeah. She has spoke on the floor, not to my liking. But
She got into it in one of the Senate hearings in the last few weeks and was very vocal about some. I can't remember which Senate.
Pete
hearing.
Hegseth, maybe.
Yeah, it might have been Pete
I think it
Hegseth.
was.
She was very very vocal
Yeah.
in questioning whoever it is that was on the chopping block that day. So.
Yeah. So what do we do? I mean, it's this is we talked to Chris Ager several times, and Chris has a strategic plan that he put into place when he was the chair of the party, and he's still talking to the people at the State House. Other than the fact that he was in the Army, go Navy, beat Army, but although he has that mindset that to organize these things the proper way, and I think that's kind of what we need.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the long-term plan was get control of all of the state level offices,
Yes.
which has been accomplished.
Yeah.
Now we have to hold it,
Yep.
and then let's start focusing on the national offices, and that's where we're at right now, and we're in a good spot to kick off that second half of the plan with all the empty seats right now. We got 2 open empty seats, so with no incumbent.
Yeah, I think we need, again though, there's going to be a lot of people jumping into the race, and the first time you run, as you did, and some of the other candidates, first time you run, it's just like with Don Bolduc, it's just get your name out there. You may not think you're going to win the first time in the primary, but if you follow through with that, and you continue to do what you did to get your name out there, you have a better chance of winning, I think, because more people will know who you are, they know what you believe in, and
No,
to Josh's point, people, they don't vote for you unless they shake your hand 3 times.
They have to feel a connection. And
Yeah.
that connection, has the double-edged sword. That's part of the reason why you get attached to someone.
Yep.
When they don't win the primary, you don't show up at the polls.
yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, but
there's
you're right. It is all about making that connection, especially like none of us really particularly want a career politician representing us, right? We
Yes.
want someone with other experiences who
Sure.
isn't going to be down there for 100 years.
Right.
But that necessarily means they're going to be a newcomer to you and a name you haven't heard before when they first get into it. So you're right, particularly in my case where I got in so late,
Yeah.
I was a newcomer. But now when I talk to people about it and say, I'm considering this, what do you think? Oh yeah, I remember that TV commercial. I remember that op-ed you wrote.
Or
Oh,
the
I met you at
debates.
that.
Yeah.
I saw you at the New England College debate.
Yep.
So that's been positive for sure, and that'll be part of my calculus when I make the final decision here in a week or two. But I do think Chris Pappas is eminently beatable. I mean, to your
Definitely.
point, you only see him when he comes around to run, right? And he talks about his bipartisanship, and wow, he's really bipartisan in the last 3 months before the
Of each
election.
election,
But
right.
boy, in that odd number year when he's not campaigning, let's look at that record.
And if he takes the Senate seat, he's gonna disappear for a solid 5.5 years.
Yes.
We're not even gonna see
Yeah.
him for
No,
6 years.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt. And then he comes back and campaigns and wants to be patted on the back for, I brought this agency 300,000, I brought this
Yes.
agency 200,000. And I want to say, Chris, stop patting yourself on the back here. That's not your work. That's the taxpayers' work you're taking credit for. And I'm sure those taxpayers would just rather you keep your hand out of their pocket in the first place and leave them with that money.
Yes.
But we have to start saying stuff like that. We have to start calling him on the fact that he joined 8 rogue Republicans to get rid of a speaker.
Yep.
And for 3 weeks, kept raising
That's a
his
good
hand.
point.
For
Yep.
3 weeks, he kept raising his hand and voting for Hakeem Jeffries while Israel was being attacked and we're powerless to vote to help them, while Russia was stepping up attacks against Ukraine. And oh, by the way, our continuing resolution on the budget was expiring. But he kept standing up and voting for Hakeem Jeffries. 25 times he voted to first weaken the speakership and then to vacate the speakership. What did that do for the people of the Granite State? How did that help us? It didn't. It gave us a weaker speaker who was beholden to a handful of people down in Washington. That's his version of bipartisanship.
Yeah.
This guy cannot be the next senator from New Hampshire. Cannot be.
Sound like you just announced on our show. We tried that with Dan. He didn't buy it either. Yeah, I think you're right, though.
I'm not
You do.
biting, truthfully, and all kidding aside, because I haven't made the final decision.
Yeah.
It's a big decision. You're
Absolutely.
not just putting yourself through it, you're putting your family through it. You know, I have thick skin, but the people that love
a
you.
large portion of it.
It
is
is-
a
large part.
I don't think folks realize when they're seeing somebody who's campaigning, what's going on behind the scenes in the campaign is one thing.
Yep.
But what's going on
Family.
behind the scenes with the candidate's family
Yeah.
is extremely, it's excruciating, right? You know, because you've got family conflict, you've got family emergencies that come up.
Yeah.
You've got other family, you
Commitments to your family.
everything
I mean,
that you've been doing for your family up until this point doesn't go away, right? You still have all of those responsibilities. So it is a massive, massive undertaking for the family, and we talked about it at length when we had Sharon on
Yeah.
as our guest one
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah, and you have to also, the people that are giving of their time and their money towards your campaign because they believe in your message, you're not being fair to them if you haven't really thought through and made sure you have a path, because otherwise you're wasting their time and their
and their money, yeah.
If it were all my time and all my money, fine. That's not hurting anybody. But there are people that believe in you, that support you, who write a check to you. You want to make sure you've been thoughtful about, is there a path? What does that look like? And we've been talking about money a lot, but this one, because it's one of the seats that both national committees have identified as one they want.
Yeah.
this is going to be financially an arms race. This thing could be $50 to $100 million, right? And so that's all in. That's not obviously the primary, but you know, that is a lot of money, and you have to be able to say, am I the candidate that can do that to give us the best shot? And while I think I'm a very good candidate, I have to be thoughtful about that, because that's a lot of money. I've been taking meetings. I've met with the National Senate Committee, had a great meeting with them. Been talking to as many folks as I can locally. I've chatted with some of the candidates who beat me last time on the Republican side. Chris Bright has become a friend.
Yeah.
We have lunch and coffee from time to time. Come to respect him a lot. We would do well to have a guy like that as our next congressman. So, you know, I've been talking to as many people as possible, trying to determine and be thoughtful about it. And I'm very close to a decision, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think more candidates need to do that. I mean, I've always said, why don't good people run for office? And there's a lot of reasons, and it's your family. It's you don't want to put your family through that, or you realize that you'd be better off working to help somebody else get elected. And I think that could play well for the Senate seat this time, because if they were serious about running, we can't do this with 17 people running.
No.
We can't do it with 10 people running. And in the old days, somebody would sit down and say, you know what? You're going to run for State House. You're going to run because you can't. Tell me why you think you can beat them, and I'll tell you why you can't.
Someone on my team of advisors that I was talking to today, as we were trying to figure out some of this stuff, said to me,
Yeah.
Walter, the old expression is, it takes one person to convince you to run, 400 to convince you to get out. Just speaking to, you know,
That's
sometimes
really true.
the decision is made too quickly, and it doesn't take much to make you think about. But I've always been a thoughtful person. I'm a chief financial officer by background, accounting, finance, human resources. So you have to be thoughtful in those areas.
Sure.
There's no shoot from the hip in any of those things. I do a lot of risk management in my day job. So I'm very thoughtful when I approach something, so that when I do make the decision, I am all in.
Yeah.
And endeavoring to meet every single voter 3 times, right?
It's a hard thing to do.
I got to get back in shape from the last election, so I can go to all those pancake breakfasts and stop at every ice cream stand, and you know.
I had something, and I come.
We need to
I'm
start writing
sorry.
stuff down. I should bring a little.
So you touched on it very briefly. You said it takes one person to convince you to run. It's usually yourself, right? Like,
Well, people.
and then
That guy in the mirror.
400 to convince you to get out. When you get in, and I'm not talking about this, but does anyone ever plan, like, what's the exit strategy? Because we've been talking about, there's a lot of money here, and there's a lot of money from donors, and you've got to be true to them. If they're going to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, you want to spend it appropriately. But when is it time to say, you know what, I got to quit, right? Because Kamala Harris burned through $1 billion in what, 4 months?
Yeah.
Right? When does a candidate say, wow, I'm in over my head, I shouldn't be doing this, and I should be backing that person over there, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that something that you plan, or is that something that you just got to have a come to Jesus moment right in the middle of it?
You know, different candidates are different, right? For me, the way I approach things in all aspects of my life is I set mile markers, right? I'm getting into it, if I do, because I'm passionate about this, this, and this. I want to contribute to the debate on this, this, and this. If I'm still doing that, and I'm gaining traction, and the numbers are looking good, I'm getting good reception from people, I'm going to stay in it. You know, the last time when I did it, one of the main goals was qualifying for a debate. And I qualified for the New England College debate, so I stayed in, and that was one of the most rewarding experiences of the campaign. It was 5 of us.
Yeah.
And
I was there. That was good.
most people roundly thought that I won it. And I was so pleased with that, but that was a mile marker. Had I not qualified for that, there wouldn't have been a path forward. So at that time, it would have been time to think about, listen, let me get out of the way.
And that's what I'm getting
let
at.
me support the person
Are you
that-
setting these goals?
I do. I don't know
and
that
reaching them.
I don't know that other people do. I mean, I think
Harris certainly didn't. She just
be
blew
honest.
money.
Right. But let's be honest. Most people that run for office, you have to have some sort of an ego, right? You have to believe, you know, I could do a better job than the other person, right? And sometimes that's very dangerous, right? Especially if you have a very big one. You don't see clearly, and you need to have good, solid people around you that say, "Hey, Walter, yeah, it was a valiant fight, but you want someone who's more closely aligned to your viewpoint to win, and you don't want to steal votes from them,
Right.
Because you're so closely aligned, you're taking their votes." So for me, had it come to that point where I thought that I was taking votes from someone who was closest to me, and I had no shot, and I didn't qualify for the stage, I would have gotten out. I would have called my donors and said, "Hey, look, I got X amount of money left over. This candidate is really the person I think should be in it, or, you know, I'd like to give this money to the party so we can back all of our candidates. Is that okay? Or do you want it back?" And I would get out of the way, and if I got out of the way, I would then say, this is who I'm supporting for whatever it's worth, and here's why I'm supporting. I think that's the responsible way to do it. But I don't think to your question, I shouldn't speak for other people, I don't know, but I would surmise that a lot of people don't think about that exit strategy on the way out. They just get in because they want the job and they think they can get it, and they keep their head down and want to fight. Human nature is you want to keep fighting too,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
None of us wants to give up. No one that's been successful is just given up, right?
Yeah.
There are roadblocks you want to keep going. So it's kind of a push-pull. But hopefully you have people around you, and I know I do, in terms of family and friends and advisors who would be, Walter, you know, because, you know, and that's what I want. There are people in this world that want to be surrounded by yes people, and there are people that, you know, want to hear the unvarnished truth and grow from it. And I tend to be that person that wants to grow from the unvarnished truth and hearing it.
Yeah, I worked for a company once and took a job at another company, and the vice president of the first company came to me and said, "I'm really sorry to see you leave." And I said, "We never agreed on anything." And he said, "Well, that's the point, because if we both agreed on it, one of us wouldn't be needed." And I always remembered that. It's that, you know, you're not needed if you can't give advice that's different, and you need people in your campaign that are willing to say to you exactly what you said. I did that with Governor Ehrlich when he was running for president. I was helping him out, and he came up before the famous cruise, you know, and we had lunch, him and Kendall, at our house, and he said, "Well, what do you think?" This was after 8 months of us working together, trying to get him, you know, involved with things. I said, "Don't run. You can't win this." And he turned to his wife and said, "I knew he was going to say that." You know.
But he still asked.
But he stepped away.
Yeah.
He stepped away because he realized that there was no way he was going to win. But he made some good contacts here, and, you know, later on sold a couple of books here. And so, I mean, you have to be able to do that. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I'd like to see you get in, but it's easier for us to say, you know, "Why don't you run?" I mean, people play to your ego. I was asked to run for all kinds of things when I was younger and into this, and I knew, you know, my wife grounded me real quick and said, "They just want you to run so they don't have to do anything." You know, it's like they weren't really on board with you. They just knew that if they kept probing you, that you might run, right? I mean, that's what happens. They play to your ego, to your point, and then you go in and you lose. You lose. So, I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I was thinking as you were talking, the story about the vice president, and I wouldn't need you if you agreed with me all the time. Part of what's wrong with our whole discourse politically is, and the example I always give is my brothers and sisters. I'm one of 4 siblings, right? We share all the same DNA,
Right.
about most of the same life experiences, right? And some of us couldn't be different politically from one another. I have a brother that is very much conservative and MAGA, and I have a sister who is very liberal. And these are 2 people that share the same DNA, the same parents, the same upbringing, the same life experiences, and they disagree completely, and still love each other.
Yeah.
And still respect each other.
Yeah.
So how is it then then in our daily lives, when we disagree with people, they're out of our lives. We can no longer see them. We can no longer go to dinner with them. It's such a weird dynamic
Yeah,
that
it is.
people don't want to be around people that, I want to be around people that disagree with me because I want to be challenged. And I want my viewpoints to be challenged to see if they're right.
Correct.
You know, and there are those occasions where I have literally had my mind changed on something because I met someone and had a conversation and they had a different life experience than I had, and they pointed out something that I had never thought of.
Yep.
You know, so it's important to the point of that gentleman who said that to you. Boy, those are the people I want to be around and work with. People that
Yeah.
see the world that way in terms of having differences of opinions and constructive differences of opinion.
Well, I think we're pretty close to wrapping it up
That-
here. So,
That pretty much does it. Thank you, Walt,
yes,
for
thanks,
for coming
Walter.
on.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was
Yeah.
great.
And we will, let's see, next week, I don't even know who we have next
Oh,
week.
I'll tell you
even
who we
though
have next
Eileen,
week.
the people love.
So,
I have
just
no-
a reminder, Rock River Hand Grenades is sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club, the oldest sports shooting club in New England, or not in New England, in New Hampshire. Located right here in Manchester, New Hampshire at 1732 Lakeshore Road. WilsonHillPistol.org is where you can find us online. You can get emails out to the board of directors, and you can inquire about joining. And we have open membership, unlike most of the other firearms organizations in the states that have long waiting lists. We do not have a waiting list. We have a private indoor range for you to shoot at. We have plenty of instructors. Again, WilsonHillPistol.org. And
Scott Maltese,
Yes,
who's,
Scott.
who's done a lot of work politically. I think he's going to be a good person to chat with as well, because it's another different view. And, we try to do that and still have some fun. I mean, we have to laugh once in a while.
Absolutely.
So,
All right, we'll see you next week.